So last week, Aggretsuko wrapped up its final season, and while the ending of the last season did slightly disappoint me, the show can't hurt me anymore, so I wanted to make a quick follow-up video ranking the previous seasons. Cause I got a lot of awesome comments and feedback on my video about season 5, so I figured, hey, I'd love to hear your rankings and thoughts on the other seasons too. This ranking and review will obviously have spoilers on the entire Aggretsuko series, so consider this your warning, and let's get into the video. So one thing I really need to address first is the Christmas special allegations. In my season 5 review, I mentioned how we don't hear what's said at the end of the hospital scene in season 1, and then season 2 starts with Retsuko getting matched up on dates by her mother, and I'm like, hey, where did the conclusion of the hospital scene go? I totally forgot to watch the Christmas special when I rewatched all of Aggretsuko. My friend Emilio even told me to watch the Christmas special, but I forgot, and a lot of you made sure to remind me, and I appreciate it. That's on me.
Currently, Aggretsuko responded to Haida's confession from season 1 in the Christmas special.
Well, guess what? It's by far the worst season/special we got. Like, I would put this in G tier or lower if I felt like it. You can argue it's not fair to rank a 20-minute special in the same category as a 150-minute season, but I've heard more than one person defend the Christmas special, and that's too many, so let me quickly break down what happens in the Aggretsuko Christmas special for you. So the special starts with Retsuko rejecting Haida, who confessed his love for her in the hospital at the end of the first season. She says she likes him, but isn't ready yet for a relationship, or that he can find someone better. I really think it's so weird to reveal this in the Christmas special. Like, this special is only 20 minutes long, and I feel like if it didn't acknowledge the hospital scene at the end of season 1, very few people would say, hey, wait, what was her answer back there? Like, could this not exist as just a standalone special? It really includes this one big line, but nothing else in the special really has a big impact on the overall plot of Aggretsuko. It's kind of like when anime have a really big plot point in a filler episode, so now the filler episode becomes necessary. I guess part of the significance of this special that I didn't really take into account was that this Christmas special happened before we really knew much about Aggretsuko becoming an annual tradition, and as the show just wrapped up its 5th and final season, it may seem silly to think it wouldn't have gotten more seasons back then, but look at Neo Yokio. It came out around the same time and also had a Christmas special in December of 2018, and its special was much better than Aggretsuko's. And then the show just disappeared into the void, and I miss it. Maybe I'll talk more about it someday. Let me know if you want to see a video on Neo Yokio, please. That's the only way I know what y'all really want. Dang, I want a Toblerone now. So Retsuko gets obsessed with validation from Instagram, even going to random restaurants to snap pictures. She's been getting coached by Sonoda, who urges her to go out on Christmas Eve instead of staying home, because that's the day of the year that you'll get the most likes. And when I say she's using Instagram, I mean that. It's not hologram or instant book or whatever, it's Instagram. But it's weird, like they don't really portray Instagram in the best light, showing Retsuko's obsession with validation and how hollow it can be, like losing her privacy. But hey, at least they're somewhat honest, so I gotta give props in that regard. Like, this is one of the more intriguing product placements/promotions I've seen in a show. So Retsuko wants to go out for Christmas Eve to get her Instagram likes, but she gets a ton of work thrown on her, and she'll be working through Christmas Eve night, which gives me so many questions, like how can they just do this to her? That's so messed up. Anyways, Retsuko, fueled by rage, goes to the convenience mart and buys props to set up her Instagram photo in the work closet to make it look like she's on a date, even though she's just in the office. And it's so sad, like how can you possibly see this episode as a beneficial advertisement for Instagram? Oh yeah, follow me on Instagram at Colby2D, please. Haida sees this and cries, but Feneko realizes this is a fake photo using her social media detective skills, and Haida finds and meets up with Retsuko, somewhat by chance. They set it up in a sweet way where Retsuko was kind of bored and disappointed that her friends took her to a standing room ramen shop, and her friends even read the situation and leave the two of them alone so that they can be together, and all they do is walk to the subway and Retsuko leaves. And Haida fist pumps like this was an absolute win for him. Like, am I crazy? Did anyone find this sweet? A lot of people find Haida annoying or creepy, and I would say I like Haida, but still, like, should I celebrate? They walked to the train and said Merry Christmas. She would have done the exact same thing with literally anyone. Like, I think she'd even do that with her boss, whom she hates. The saving grace of this special is seeing the families of some of Aggretsuko's co-workers, which was super cute, but overall it was pretty dull, and the ending is just not very sweet or satisfying to me. But if you like this special, let me know. I'd really love to hear why you love or hate this special. Next up is Season 4, which is obviously at the bottom for seasons, so let's just get it out of the way. It really shredded the illusion Aggretsuko would have plot progression for me. After the way Season 3 ended, with Aggretsuko going to be an idol, but then deciding not to, I was kinda like, okay, we're still working in the office after the 3rd season. She's had multiple opportunities to leave. Maybe this will be the season where things get better for her. But, I don't know, this season kinda turned into Haida's American Psycho Joker arc, in which he becomes a manager and commits fraud for the company. It's cool and provides a lot to Haida's character, but when you really watch through, the details are just all over the place, and you realize the development Haida has isn't really much further than the last season. They just kinda artificially regress Haida, so that getting back to his standard self looks like development, and that's a huge flaw of the show people feel is present in many seasons, not just Season 4. This season does have 2 really good things going for it, despite all its flaws though. First, the season gets really dark and brutal and does a great job showing corporate ineptitude and apathy. Like, Aggretsuko's coworker Kabai has a sick child and needs to go pick him up, and the boss just says, hey, you still have some work to do, can grandma or grandpa pick them up? What about a helpful neighbor with nothing better to do? Like, this is enraging, but it's in a good way. It's well written to annoy you here. The second thing I really like about this season is how everyone comes together to stop the overtake of the company. Like, Kabai uses her spy skills to help, and I'm a big fan of when everyone comes together at the end of a show and uses their talents to save the day. So while this mission definitely lasts too long and isn't the most interesting in its execution, I have to give points to the great concept. I was hoping Season 5 would do this on a grander scale for its conclusion, but the end of Aggretsuko had very little assistance from her friends, and I just feel disappointed. Like, Tsunoda or Feneko could have wreaked havoc on the world with their skills of deception and psychology and social media. One last thing I want to say about Season 4 is, similar to the Christmas special, or most of the other seasons honestly, I hate the last shot it ends on. This season ends with Haida and Aggretsuko looking up at a screen Tadano is on, and Haida's like, hey, good for him. Like, who cares about Tadano? He was hardly in this season. Why do we have to end on Haida admiring him? What about Haida and Aggretsuko or something? Tadano is my favorite character in the show, and even I'm saying who cares about him in this moment. I feel it'd be much nicer to end on a shot of Haida and Aggretsuko now that they're together at the end of the season. Also, it doesn't really help that Tadano's role in the show significantly decreases every season, so kinda ending the season with him here is just a little weird. We gotta keep moving, so I'll quickly go over Season 5, as this is the number 4 entry on the list. If you want my full analysis, check out my video I uploaded last weekend, End of Aggretsuko. I'm really grateful for how many people watched and commented on that video. It means so much more to me than I can even convey. Thank you. If I had to sum it up real quickly though, if you don't feel like watching the video or if you've already seen it, Aggretsuko and Haida move in with each other, meet their respective families, then get thrown into a political campaign, they lose, get married, and then the show ends. Obviously there's a lot of details I'm missing, like how Haida was homeless, but if we're considering the main plots of the season, the main change from the start to the end is them getting married. And even then, we don't see any wedding, and some people didn't even realize they got married since we only see them signing the papers that say bride and groom during a montage before the final election night. Seasons 4 and 5 feel very close together to me, but Season 5 had a lot more funny moments, and it ended with a significant change in their relationship, so hey, progress. So we're left with the first 3 seasons of Aggretsuko for the top 3 spots, and these are all a tier above what's been mentioned so far. And I've seen many people say any of the first 3 seasons are their favorite. But for me, the 3rd place spot has to go to season 1. Season 1 actually really neatly contains itself, and if the show ended in just the first season, it would be disappointing, but it has one of the more satisfying conclusions to any of the Aggretsuko seasons. The season does a great job quickly identifying Retsuko's character as a frustrated office worker with a sexist boss, and she vents her frustrations through death metal screaming. And we just see all Retsuko's frustrations boil up throughout the season until we get a rap battle against her boss, Mr. Tone. I think the show does a great job with Mr. Tone, because when we first see him, he's just awful, and every time I rewatch, I think, how does he redeem himself again? Like, he says, go get tea, that's a woman's job, and stuff. Like, it's based as hell, but still. It's interesting to see him reveal that his bosses were super tough on him, and that's partially why he's tough himself. But what makes him a nice character is that he has a lot of tough love. Like, even in the end of season 5, he helps motivate Retsuko in her campaign by laughing and insulting her so that she gets up and kicks butt again. Another really interesting thing this season explores is when they report Mr. Tone's harassment and how that changes the whole vibes of the office. I think it's a really precarious subject to tackle workplace harassment, and you can even argue that the show doesn't portray it in a great way. Like, there's 2 times in the show Mr. Tone gets reported for harassing the employees, especially the women, and both times it kind of just ends up negatively impacting everyone because Tone either acts all sparkly and creepy, or he gets relegated to a new made-up department and the office kind of implodes without him. The highlight of the season is definitely Retsuko's epic rap battle of history against Mr. Tone. It's fun to see his old school rap, and seeing him realize it was Retsuko that reported him to the CEO is so dramatic and scary. I love it. I wish this was the end of the season though, because after this whole event of Retsuko standing up for herself, she goes on a date with this guy named Risasuke that I've always thought was uncanny in how much he looks like Retsuko. It's well written, like Risasuke is totally clueless and unaware of her feelings and lacks social cues, but Retsuko tries to force herself to be in love so much. It's really interesting to see. But I think standing up to Tone in the karaoke battle would have been a way more epic conclusion than her yelling at Risasuke. But to the show's credit, the ending of the season is really nice. Haida ends up in the hospital because he got drunk and got pneumonia, and when Retsuko visits, he confesses his feelings to her, even describing that he seems to like the idealized version of her he's made, and not the real her, but he wants to get to know her more. Some people find this line creepy, but I don't know, I think it's somewhat profound and sweet to admit. It feels just very candid and real to me. Retsuko learns to keep moving forward, and she tries to be more optimistic, but she can still rage and stand up for herself when needed. While the season has its merits, there are aspects that bother me, such as Retsuko's friend Poku, who starts an online company, and tells Retsuko the world runs on responsible people like her so that she can have more freedom. This just doesn't feel right to me. Like, Retsuko is considered a people pleaser, but this always comes off to me as, thanks for being responsible, I get to enjoy myself because of your sacrifice. Like, an interesting dichotomy this could have created could be Retsuko valuing structure and security over the kind of wild freedom Poku desires, and that's why Retsuko works in an office and Poku is making her own business. But they don't really make many strong points with their interactions. It comes off to me more as showing what Retsuko's life and job could be like, and increases her frustration with her own job. My second favorite season of Aggretsuko has to be season 3. I love the concept of Retsuko becoming an idol and doing a job that incorporates her singing and personality, but it feels like the whole season just focuses too much on this plot. Whereas previous seasons had a lot of different, overlapping plots I found to be just a little more interesting. Like, season 1 had Retsuko reaching her boiling point with her boss, or her romance with Risasuke. Season 2 had the business festival day, or her relationship with Tadano. Season 3 just kinda has her work as an idol, and that's sort of it. You could argue the other plot is Haida dating Inui, and his struggle with whether he should pursue Retsuko or not, and this season is really good. But when the idol group is the plot of the whole season, and she doesn't pursue it any further by the end, it's just a little disappointing to me. To quickly recap the season, it starts with Retsuko losing most of her savings on a virtual unicorn Dan Avidan boyfriend. She then backs into a parked car, and she doesn't have the funds to pay the guy back, so she ends up working for him. Although she thinks she's gonna be trafficked or something, it turns out the basement he works in is actually an underground girls' idol group that has a small but dedicated fan base. Someone commented on the last video that the biggest glow up in the show was the 3 fanboys of the idol group becoming jacked and becoming security guards in season 5, and I'd have to agree. Like, I feel like they got 5 feet taller in addition to muscles. The idols operate in debt, so they can't really pay Retsuko either, but she's kinda indebted to them now, so she makes really smart decisions that showcase her skills, like telling the boss instead of wasting money on excess badges they buy for fan merch, they can print them on their own and avoid eating all the excess costs. Haida feels pressure to ask Retsuko out, but he kinda gets cold feet, and also Retsuko's pretty preoccupied with both her finances and the idol group. We see him date this gal named Inui, and honestly, I think he has as much chemistry with her as he does anyone else in the show. They share a love for music and records, and they just get along pretty well. The season ends with a crazy fan that looks like Shigaraki from My Hero Academia trying to stab Retsuko because she's tarnishing the music of the OTM girls idol group, and Haida ends up saving her. Retsuko understandably secludes herself from society, and Haida ends up performing karaoke to kind of make her mad and get her to come back out of her shell, and they decide to take on the world together and to kick butt and not be afraid. Personally, I think this is the best ending to any season of Aggretsuko, by a significant margin. I love Haida's song, I love the visuals, we finally get to see his punk rock side, even to the outfit, and I've always interpreted it as Haida giving Retsuko tough love, you know, calling her a chicken and teasing her, and getting screamed at by her feels like a self-sacrifice dedicated to his love for her. I think it's thought-provoking too, like she's scared because she nearly just got stabbed, and it was for singing and finding something she was passionate about, and there's so much confusion and emotion that can be felt from this conclusion. And while I and a lot of other fans feel Retsuko and Haida don't share too much intimacy or connection, this scene really is one of their strongest moments in favor of them. Overall, it's a really entertaining season that shows Retsuko's skills and personality really well, and Haida's struggle of dating other gals or pursuing Retsuko was an interesting dilemma. So this leaves only one season left. My favorite season is easily season 2 of Aggretsuko. I think the pace of this season is one of the best. Ironically, it's similar to the pace of season 5, in which the first 5 or 6 episodes wrap up one plot point, then the second half is a different plot, but they both work really well. I love the characters, and there's some of the funniest moments of the whole show in this season. And I love Tadano. He's my favorite character. A tech mogul who appears kinda as a young slacker is just really interesting to me. The first half of season 2 revolves around the plot of Retsuko being pressured by her mother to date. She goes on a date with this polar bear, but Retsuko isn't really swept off her feet, but more so panics over the idea of losing half herself to marriage. She even tries speed dating, but all the guys are just kinda dopey. And with Retsuko's mother telling her she's gonna be in an irreversible position where all the good guys are gone, there's a slight feeling of dread. The first half of the season, work-wise, revolves around a new coworker, Anai, who irks me so much. Like, it's the point, but still. Basically, whenever anyone says anything to him that he can interpret as negative, he sends a giant wall of text to them about their interaction, asking them to defend their position, and that he's going to report them. It's kind of funny when he does end up reporting Retsuko to Tone, who just pats her on the back and says, "Good job." Also, I hate seeing the purple parts of his eyes, like, that's so gross. I've heard a lot of people hate Anai, I know people that love Anai, and think he's relatable. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle, where I love to hate him, if that makes sense. Some people think he's kind of pointless after he develops to not be an ass to his coworkers, but I still think his personality, having the really chipper bright face while saying something kind of shrewd, is really funny, and I enjoy having him around. I think the funniest moment of the season, and maybe even the whole show, is when Retsuko gets a text message from Anai and gets really angry.
I'm scared.
It's so real and relatable. We see no one can stand up to Anai, even Mr. Tone, but he only comes around when Kabai, who we've only seen as a gossipy chatterbox so far, acts very motherly and supportive to Anai. In a way, it goes to show Anai's insecurities, but it's also really nice to see this side of Kabai, and gives her a lot more depth that we see further throughout the season in the show with her relation to her family. The big event for Season 2's first half is a family day event for work. Saying the big event is almost redundant considering there's so much going on, like Retsuko's romance and dating, the tension with their new employee Anai, but it really goes to show how tightly packed this season is. So the accounting department's booth for the family day is a yakisoba stand run by Retsuko and Anai. She sucks at cooking, but Anai actually contributes, mainly because Kabai and her family are there. We get a heartwarming scene of Kabai, her husband, and their kids, in which one of the kids bumps his head, but Kabai takes the pain away by throwing it to the dad, making all the kids laugh. This inspires Retsuko, and it's heartwarming to see Kabai's place in the world, they say, but it also shows Retsuko's desire to have a family someday, which is really sweet. There's another aspect of Retsuko's life we haven't really discussed much yet, and this is the social aspect. She plans to go on a trip with Gori and Washimi, but they can't find a tour bus they agree on. Also, to get her nagging mother to leave her alone, Retsuko begins taking driving classes, and meets this guy, Tadano, who seems to be stuck on the first course of driver's ed, despite being there for a long time. He says him and work aren't getting along really well right now, and he's really chill and funny. Retsuko helps him learn how to drive so he can pass his test, but he suddenly disappears, despite being known to hang at the school all day sometimes, just lazing around. So Retsuko and Tadano end up dating, and then Retsuko finds out Tadano is actually the tech genius that's been incorporating some AI stuff into her company. Tadano even brings Retsuko on a corporate golf outing, and it turns out it's with the CEO of her company, who doesn't really know her, and her boss, Mr. Tone, who pretends he doesn't know her, and it's really funny. A cameraman reveals Retsuko and Tadano are dating online, and the whole world sees their relationship and gossips about it. There's a lot of hate comments she receives, like how she's a gold digger. Haida is one of Tadano's biggest fanboys, but after finding out the two are dating, he's really angry. There's a lot of interesting character moments in this second half of Season 2, but ultimately, their relationship fails when Tadano reveals he doesn't really want a family, or to get married even. It's nice to see Retsuko stand up for what's important to her, but it feels weird in a way that she conveys this by screaming at Tadano. Like, she doesn't have any animosity towards him really, she just kind of acknowledges, hey, you love your work and have that passion, it's not mine. Tadano really does provide an opportunity for Retsuko to pursue or find her passion, and in a way it's one of the more frustrating aspects of the series, that Retsuko doesn't really have a hobby or passion she wants to pursue further. Like, she hates her job, but she says that's where she belongs. And I think this is what led a lot of people, including myself, to feel like this show isn't gonna have Retsuko leave her job. And it feels almost like they were inclined to encourage corporate assimilation in a way. The context of Japan's corporate culture is always interesting and an important context to keep in mind throughout the whole show, but sometimes it just feels like Retsuko is kinda dull in a way where she doesn't really have much passion or fun. Season 2 is easily my favorite season because of how much goes on. Like, there's so many different mini arcs throughout the season, so many locations and characters, and I think the dilemma between Retsuko and Tadano was really interesting and felt very realistic. I like that they don't demonize him, and it's nice Retsuko is more in tune with her own feelings. But yeah, this is my final ranking overall. I'd love to know what your favorite and least favorite seasons were, and why. I can genuinely see why any season could be a favorite or least favorite. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. You should like and subscribe if you want, cause you're chill like that, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.